I know a lot of you guys feel spoiled, but I can tell you, I'm about to give you a warning that me spoiling y'all is going to come to an end probably tomorrow. Yeah, probably tomorrow. Or I'd say technically Wednesday. Yeah, I'll probably do another video tomorrow. And I know I got a live stream, a Patreon exclusive live stream scheduled for Wednesday. But after that, you probably won't hear from me for approximately a week, at least a week. Because I'm flying to Los Angeles to work with some clients on Thursday morning. And most of you know that 90% of the time that I'm out of town, I don't upload any content. There's been a handful of exceptions. Like I remember when I was in Miami, I did some content last year. When I was on my cruise, I uploaded at least one video from when I was on my 10-day cruise to the Panama Canal. There might have been one or two other times I've taken trips where, yeah, there was a couple. Like one time I've done a couple live streams from Los Angeles. Because, as you know, that's the number one city I have the most clients in. Or at least I say the most one-on-one clients. Now, when it comes to like email consultations and Skype and telephone consultations, my clients are kind of all over the place. Not only just all over the United States, but all over the world. But when it comes specifically to one-on-one face-to-face coaching, I would say without question, I would say no less than 40 to 50% of all of my one-on-one face-to-face coaching session clients have been in Los Angeles. Yeah, that's where I've traveled to the most for one-on-one coaching. I think part of the reason is because I used to live there, and a lot of people know that. So they know I know the place in and out. And another place is Los Angeles, man. On the positive end, there's a lot of beautiful, sexy women in Los Angeles. But it's a very challenging place to hook up with women. I mean, I think there's a lot of large cities that are challenging. But Los Angeles in particular. Now, you would think I would have a lot of one-on-one face-to-face coaching clients out of New York since it's real large. I think I've only worked with like 2 or 3 clients one-on-one in the New York area. But by contrast, man, I've worked with, I can't even count how many clients I work with in Los Angeles for one-on-one face-to-face coaching. Okay. I got some beef with some of y'all. Well, first I'm going to start out with some good news. As I already mentioned, I'm going to mention again, I'm very thankful for the growing popularity in my patreon.com page, which is patreon.com/mode1, MODEONE. I'm very thankful. As I mentioned in the previous video, in approximately the last 6 to 7 weeks, I say 7 weeks. Do you know about 7 weeks ago, I only had somewhere between 170 and 175 Patreon supporters. I had between 170 and 175 Patreon supporters. Right now, as of this morning, I had 288. 288. So that's about, at minimum, that's about 113 subscriber increase in the last 7 weeks. And I would say actually more specifically, I would say a little over half of that number has come in just the last 2 weeks. Just the last 2 weeks. Since I switched to my new format, where I do a brief amount of content for the YouTube general public, and then the remaining content, you got to be a Patreon subscriber. Yeah, but yeah, I've gone from 170 to 175 to 288. That's my largest increase in Patreon subscribers in that shorter period of time. Because I first got on Patreon in mid-April of 2017 was when I first got on Patreon. I didn't really start becoming active on Patreon until about mid to late June of 2017. I think my highest number last year was 215. Yeah, 215, which was in July. Yeah, that was my highest number last year. I had as many as 215 Patreon subscribers, but then I actually went down. Sadly, yeah, I went down. I reached my peak for 2018 was about mid to late July. I was up to about 215. Then I slowly but surely start going down. Yeah, I went down to as low after that. After July of last year, I went down to as low as about 160. I went down to as low as about 160. And then, like I said, just under 2 months ago, I was only at about 170 to 175. Now I'm at 288. So I'm happy about that. Now, speaking of my Patreon subscribers, I'm always looking for ways to better serve the needs of my Patreon subscribers because I love and appreciate them. I don't have no haters in that group. I don't have no harsh critics in that group. They give me nothing but love, respect, and support, and of course, financial support. So I got nothing but love for them. And if my Patreon subscribers want to offer me suggestions for improvement or constructive criticism, I'm all ears. That's why I went to the Patreon, what's known as the PatreCon conference last November, and I went to one in the Chicago area about a month and a half ago. Because I'm always interested in better serving the needs of my Patreon subscribers. That's the good news. That's the good news. Now here's where you're about to hear another infamous Alan Roger Currie admonishment. Hey man, don't come in my fucking comment section, offer me suggestions for improvements on my videos or what you think is constructive criticism. Number one, two things. If you're not a Patreon subscriber of mine, I'm not going to put much weight on your suggestions for improvement or your constructive criticism. If all you do is watch my videos for free on YouTube, yeah, I might give you this much, care this much about what you say. But for the most part, I don't give a fuck about your suggestions for improvement or constructive criticism. And even more harshly, if you don't own any of my books, if you don't own not one of my ebooks, not one of my paperbacks, not one of my audiobooks, bruh, let me tell you, look, I haven't said this in a while. This is one of my, I always keep talking about signature phrases. One of my signature phrases is look into my eyes. Look into my eyes. Man, I don't give a fuck about shit you say. Real talk. I don't give a fuck about shit you say. If you don't own any of my books, I don't give a fuck about anything you say in my comment section. And matter of fact, there's a greater than 50% chance I'm going to delete anything you say in my comment section. And there's two things I hate is people either asking me a bunch of questions, like dating advice questions, but yet they don't own any of my books, or people offer me suggestions for improvement or constructive criticisms and they don't own any of my books. That's one of the first things I ask people when I do email consultation with people or Skype and telephone consultations, well, one-on-one too. One of the first things I ask is, how many of my books do you own? You probably see me say that in the comment section. If somebody starts asking me a bunch of questions, one of the first questions I ask, I'll say, how many of my books do you own? If you tell me you don't own any of my books, real talk, I only care about two people. And I said this when I first got on YouTube. I only really care about two groups of people. People who own one or more of my books, one or more of my ebooks, one or more of my paperbacks, one or more of my audiobooks. People who own one or more of my books. Or at minimum, people who are on the verge of purchasing one or more of my books. You don't own them yet, but at least you're on the verge of purchasing one or more of my books. But if you don't own any of my books, and you're not at least minimum on the verge, you have an above average degree of interest in purchasing one of my books, man, don't come in my comment section with critical comments. Like I had a couple guys come in my comments and say, see, this just shows that old adage, man, you can't please everybody. What was the criticism last year? What was the criticism last year? What was the criticism last year? People calling them. A lot of my haters and critics were saying, Alan, your videos are too long. Alan, man, your videos would be a lot better if they were shorter. Alan, your videos would be a lot shorter. I think you would have more YouTube subscribers if your videos were shorter. I think you would have more Patreon subscribers if your videos were shorter. Well, that's actually turned out to be true. I do have more Patreon subscribers. But now guess what the criticism is? Not by a lot of people, just by a handful of people. But now people, I'm reading my conversations, people saying, man, Alan, I don't like all these short videos, man. I don't like these short videos. Your videos are too short. Your videos are too short. Can't please everybody. Can't please everybody. But yeah, man, on a real tip though, like, I hate to pick on this brother again. I'm not going to say his name, but he know who he is. And a lot of people in my comment section know what I'm talking about. The brother who had to ask him to take down his video because he was copying off of my no free attention video. My no free attention video. We ended up, when I was talking to him through Facebook to ask him to take down the video, which he did, to his credit, he did. He took it down. But when I said, man, you don't know that's one of my signature phrases and signature philosophies from my book, The Possibility of Sex? And he was basically like, now I don't even know about your book, The Possibility of Sex. He basically went on to tell me he don't own any of my books. This dude was always in my comment section. Always, I would say for every 5 videos I did, he was in at least my comment section, at least 3 out of every 5 videos I did. But yet, he said he don't own none of my books. Why the fuck you listening to me if you don't own any of my books? I mean, real talk, other than to steal my shit. Jack my swagger, jack my shit. Why you in my comment section if you don't own any of my books? I mean, real talk, man. None of y'all should even be in my comment section on a regular basis if you don't own at least one of my ebooks, at least one of my paperbacks, or at least one of my audiobooks. If you don't own at least one or more of my books, or again, at minimum, you're not on the verge of buying one of my books, stay out of my damn comment section. Seriously, man, you asking to be blocked and or deleted. You're asking to be blocked and or deleted, and in worst case scenario, I'm just disabled. You know I did that for one video recently in the last 2 weeks. There was at least one video I did. I think it was my first copycat on this whole copycat issue. I actually disabled my comment section where people couldn't even post any comments. And that's the worst case scenario I'll do. I'll you know. Because actually, now that most of my most valuable content is on Patreon, I really don't care about the comment section. Because people, Patreon subscribers, they can comment on my videos on my Patreon page. So I really don't care about the comment section. But on the real tip, man. But yeah, man, you know, you just can't please everyone. Now, speaking, you know, I got to touch on it real quick. Because people have been doing videos saying, you know, I'm not a copycat of Alan Roger Currie. I was watching the game. I don't know how many of y'all NBA fans, but I was watching the NBA game between Toronto Raptors and who they play? Oh, Philadelphia 76ers. And if you saw that game, Kawhi Leonard, who used to play for the San Antonio Spurs, he hit this incredible game-winning shot. But when you heard the NBA analysts talking about the game after the game was over, and you heard a lot of the NBA analysts talking about the game, who was the first person they compared him to? Not all the analysts, but at least half of them. Michael Jordan. They was like, man, wasn't that just like Michael Jordan? That was very Jordan-esque of Kawhi Leonard. Now, I'm sure that's probably a part of, well, I would say Kawhi Leonard, I don't want to speak for him because I don't know his thoughts, but I'm just going to say he probably has mixed feelings about that. Half of him is probably flattered by that because everybody recognizes that Michael Jordan's a great player, but I'm sure he wants to form his own identity. But when I did my video about creating and inventing something versus popularizing something or revolutionizing something, what did I say? I said the number one time people are going to always compare you to somebody else is when there's at least one other person who's doing the same thing you're doing, but they've done it either better than you or more repeatedly than you. They've done it better than you or they've done it more repeatedly than you. That's when you're going to always get comparisons. So if somebody's on YouTube saying, "Damn, why is he saying, I'm being an Alan Roger Currie copycat?" It wasn't my intention to be an Alan Roger Currie copycat. Well, obviously, there's two reasons. Number one, you must be talking about some of the same discussion topics and subject matter that I do. Something about your speaking style, the way you're verbally expressing yourself, must be similar to how I express myself. But the biggest thing, going back to Michael Jordan and Kawhi Leonard, and this is going to be me being somewhat egotistical, but I don't give a fuck. If you remember when I first came on YouTube, man, I said this. So I said I'm not the biggest person on modesty. That ain't one of my strong points. I said that kind of half seriously, half lightheartedly. I said modesty ain't one of my strong points. I know how to break shit down, man, when it comes to female sexual psychology. I know how to break it down. I know how to break it down so well that I was invited to teach a college class. I was technically a college professor on this shit. I mentioned this a few videos ago. I was the first person in the Indiana University college system to ever be invited to teach a class about dating and relationships and human sexuality who was not in possession of either a PhD or a master's degree. That's how thorough I am at breaking shit down. So if anybody's on YouTube trying to talk about the same thing as me, but they ain't breaking it down with the same intelligence that I do, the same articulation that I do, the same specific lengthy detail that I do, it's inevitable they're going to be compared to me. It's inevitable. Just like Kawhi. Kawhi is a great player in his own right. He is a great player in his own right. But the reason why people were comparing him to Jordan is because Jordan was famous for hitting just a phenomenal number of game-winning shots. He was known for that. I mean, there's a lot of players in the NBA who have hit game-winning shots, but he was known for that. So whenever somebody hits a fantastic game-winning shot, there's a greater than 50% chance people are going to say, "Oh, he's just like Michael Jordan." When you talk about shit to do with a lot of shit I talk about, you're going to be compared, whether it's your intention to be compared to me or not. People are going to compare you to me because I'm at a professor level. I'm at a professor level. But anyway, what I want to talk about in this video is something related to what Eddie Murphy said in an interview a long time ago. I never forget. And it relates to what I was just talking about at the beginning of this conversation about you can't please everybody. Eddie Murphy, which it amazes me, some young people don't even know who he is. I've had young people say, "Who's that? Who's Eddie Murphy?" That's like 20 years from now, young people saying, "Kevin Hart. Who is that? I don't know who Kevin Hart is. Who is that?" For you young people, let's just say Eddie Murphy was the Kevin Hart of my generation, the Richard Pryor of my generation. But he said in one interview one time, he talked about the irony of wanting to be liked. The irony of wanting to be liked. He might have even talked about the paradox of wanting to be liked. And what he simply went on to say was, basically in simple terms, he said, when you try to be liked, that's when most of the time you won't be. When you specifically go out of your way to try to be liked, that's when most of the time you won't be. And on the flip side, he said, when you really just honestly don't give a fuck about being liked, when you just really just genuinely don't care about being liked, he said, ironically, that's when you'll usually be liked the most. That's when you usually be liked the most. Like, speaking of comparisons, I was just talking about Kawhi Leonard being compared to Michael Jordan. If there's one person I did used to be compared with, that people back in the day used to say, "You and this guy are very similar to each other. You and this guy," of course, that would be David X. David X. If there's ever been another dating coach that I was briefly compared to quite a bit, particularly around the time of 2006, I'd say starting with roughly 2006 to about 2010, a lot of people used to compare me and David X to each other. A lot of people. Yeah. His fans would tell me that I was very similar to him, and my fans would tell David X that he was very similar to me. So me and David X, we used to be compared to each other quite a bit. And even though a lot of people realized that we had a lot of differences in the way we talked about direct verbal game and the way we taught it, but still a lot of people would say we were proud. Most people would rank us as the top two best dating coaches and teachers of direct verbal game. Like in the same way I had my 4 modes of verbal communication, David X's thing was his 2 golden rules. His 2 golden rules. Like, here's David X's style. David X doesn't really so much tell guys, go out and be direct. Go out and be direct with women. He doesn't really tell guys that. Like, even I myself will say, I will a lot of times tell guys to be direct with women. David X doesn't really tell guys to be direct with women. What he does, I use this analogy. Most of you know about cause and effect. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. I'll give you an example. Losing weight. A lot of people treat losing weight sometimes like it's an action, like it's something you can wake up and do. You can't wake up and lose weight. You can't. You cannot wake up and lose weight. You can wake up and decide to eat right. You can wake up and decide to exercise and just generally take care of your body. But you cannot just wake up and lose weight. Losing weight is the effect of eating right and exercising. It is the effect of, I'm sorry, I'm seeing something on my phone that looks weird. Sorry about that. Yeah, that is the effect of eating right and exercising. Well, David X, see, that's kind of how David X basically looks at direct. Instead of specifically, again, telling guys to be direct, he basically believes, here are his 2 golden rules, if you don't know him. Most people, a lot of my fans are familiar with David X, but for those not familiar, here are his 2 golden rules. His rule number 1 is, you should never concern yourself with what a woman thinks about anything you do or anything you say. You should never concern yourself with what a woman thinks about anything you do or anything you say. Put another way, you should never, just plain and simple, you should never give a fuck what women think about you. You should never give a fuck what women think about you. His second golden rule is, you should never put the wants and needs of a woman, such as your wife, fiance, long-term girlfriend, or casual sex lover, you should never put the wants and needs of a woman above the importance of your own wants and needs. You are the most important person in a relationship. That's, you can say, almost his way of saying you should never put a woman on a pedestal. And I have similar themes in my books that relate to those 2 rules. Like, to his first rule, my biggest thing I talk about in my original Mode 1 book is reaching a point of egotistical indifference. Egotistical indifference. Anybody who's read my 1999 version of Mode 1, my 2006 version, I think even my updated version of Mode 1, I talk about egotistical indifference. Egotistical indifference is just a simple, formal way of saying not giving a fuck what other people think. When you're egotistically indifferent towards the opinions, comments, criticisms, and expectations of other people, that means you don't let other people's positive and flattering comments juice your head up too much. You don't let other people's positive and flattering comments juice your head up too much, make your head swell too much. Because then if you do, you set yourself up to be manipulated by other people. And on the flip side, you don't allow people's criticisms and insults and jabs at you to negatively affect your ego too much, because then you can also be manipulated. So you don't want to ever put yourself in a position to be manipulated by other people's flattering compliments. You don't want to be in a position to allow both women and other men to be able to manipulate you with flattering compliments to your ego. And on the flip side, you don't want to allow yourself to be manipulated by women's or other men's negative comments about you, harsh criticisms, and personal insults. You got to be able to get to a point where you ignore both. And I'll admit, and I think both of y'all know from watching all y'all know from watching my YouTube videos, sometimes that's challenging for me, particularly the second category. Sometimes I do pay attention to criticisms and insults here on YouTube. But yeah, you want to always reach a state of egotistical indifference. But yeah, that's one of the differences between me and David X. David X, again, he doesn't really teach men, he doesn't say to men, go out and be direct. He just teaches men not to give a fuck what women think about them. And he basically feels that if you reach a point where you don't give a fuck, where you genuinely don't give a fuck about what women think about you, you're going to naturally, your manner of verbally expressing yourself is going to naturally become more direct. Is going to naturally become more direct. And again, I generally agree with that. I say that in my own way, in my own books. Even though I also will specifically encourage men to express themselves in a direct manner. Okay. One of the things I want to talk about, and it's just a very quick clarification, is a lot of people think being honest is automatically synonymous with being direct. That being honest is automatically synonymous with being direct. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. You can be honest and not necessarily be direct. And on the flip side, you can be direct and not necessarily be honest. So those two are not always automatically synonymous. And I've talked to certain people, including some of my clients, that sometimes think those two go hand in hand with each other, but they're not. Again, you can be, I give you a perfect, like, if you listen to my Mode 1 audiobook, I want to say, I talk about this in my chapter about Mode 3 behavior. Mode 3 behavior, when I'm specifically talking about men who are liars, cheaters, and adulterers. Liars, cheaters, and adulterers. I basically say that there are a lot of men who are liars, cheaters, and adulterers that are direct, but they're not honest. They're direct, but they're not honest. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're married, but you're at a nightclub and you go up to a woman and directly tell her, you say, hey, I think you're sexy. I think we should go back to my place so I can fuck you and make you come on my dick. Would that be considered direct? Yes, it would. Would that be considered honest? Not necessarily, no. You honest about the fact that you want to fuck this woman, but what you're not honest about the fact is that you're married. If you try to hide from this woman that you're married, you don't make mention of the fact that you're married, and so, let's say on top of that, you don't have your wedding ring on, then you're not being honest. See, that's what people don't realize about Mode 1. Mode 1 is not just about being direct, verbally direct with women. It's about being brutally honest too, straightforwardly honest. Yeah, so I want to separate those terms. See, a lot of people tend to use these terms interchangeably, the term verbally direct and the term straightforwardly honest. A lot of people think those two are automatically synonymous with each other. No, they're not. You can be verbally direct without being straightforwardly honest. You can be verbally direct without being straightforward. And again, that's an example I would give. It would be, like let's say you were HIV positive and you approached a woman and told her you wanted to fuck her and she agreed to have sex with you, and then you fuck her and you end up giving her HIV. And she's basically like, why didn't you tell me? And you say, well, you never asked. See, that would be an example of a situation where you were verbally direct, but you weren't straightforwardly honest. Like, y'all should remember a story I told on a video. I remember one time I had a guy, he purchased a Skype consultation from me. And he wanted some advice on basically how to seduce women. But he ended up telling me in the first 5 minutes of Skype consultation that he was married. And once he told me that, man, at first I just gave him a look. I just looked at him. And of course he was like, Alan, why are you just kind of looking at me? Because, I have a way of giving you a glare. Well, I don't want to give you a glare. I'm going to give you a glare. I just glared at him for at least 2 to 3 minutes straight. And then I was like, why the fuck did you purchase my consultation? He said, because, you're the master of verbal seduction. Actually, my nickname is the king of verbal seduction. If you put that in Google, all kinds of hits going to come out associated with me. The king of verbal seduction. I got that nickname. Remember the woman I always mention in my videos, who I call Sharon? That's not a real name, but I always call her on my videos Sharon. Her and 2 of her girlfriends were the first women to give me that nickname. The king of verbal. Well, actually, they gave me like 3 nicknames. One of them was the king of verbal kinkiness, the king of kinky phone sex, the king of talking dirty, and the king of verbal seduction. So they actually gave me about 3 or 4 different king nicknames. Yeah, I've had other women too. Other women have called me one of those 4. The king of verbal kinkiness, the king of talking dirty, the king of phone sex, and the king of verbal seduction. But yeah, specifically king of verbal seduction, I got that from the woman who I refer to as Sharon and her 2 girlfriends. They gave me that nickname. But anyway, going back to this guy in the Skype consultation. Yeah, man, I told him, I said, dude, I can't do a Skype consultation with you. And he said, are you serious? Are you serious? I said, yeah. I said, you married, man. I don't help men cheat on their wives. I don't know who told you that that's what I do, but I don't do that. I don't help men cheat on their wives, man. That goes against my Mode 1 ethics, man. Mode 1 is all about being straightforwardly honest with women. It ain't just about getting women in bed. And it ain't just about being verbally direct about your sexual desires, interests, and intentions. Being Mode 1 is about being brutally honest. So, for example, if you're married and you're looking to have sex with someone other than your wife, being Mode 1 would represent you telling women that, hey, I'm married, I got a wife, but I want to fuck you. And even more importantly, it's about you telling your wife straightforwardly that you want to fuck other women in addition to her. I haven't cheated on a woman since I was in like my late teens, early 20s. That's real talk. That's the honest truth. The last time I cheated on a woman, I think, was when I was like 19 or 20. 19 or 20 was the last time I cheated on a woman. Starting with roughly the age of 21 up until now, man, I ain't never cheated on a woman, man. If I'm in a relationship with a woman, I tell women straightforwardly that I'm going to be fucking other women. I tell them that straightforwardly. I never promise women long-term monogamy, ever. I never, ever promise women long-term monogamy. I never do that. Starting with the age of like 21, 22 to up until now, I never promise women long-term monogamy. I always let women know that there's going to be at least a 50% chance that I'm going to be fucking other women. Yeah, I say that in my book, The Beta Male Revolution. I talk about that. I don't promise women long-term monogamy, man. I ain't cheated. The last time I cheated on a woman was when I was like 19, 20. That was the last time I cheated on a woman. So yeah, man, you can be verbally direct without being straightforwardly honest. Yeah, there are some guys who are Mode 3 that are verbally direct, but they're not honest. Again, specifically the category of liars, cheaters, and adulterers. Liars, cheaters, and adulterers. A lot of those guys are verbally direct with women, but like, honestly, I got some close friends that are like that, and I've admonished them for it too. I got a couple frat brothers who are married that be cheating on their wives, and they think because they tell the women they cheating with directly that they want to have sex with them, they think that means they're Mode 1, and I always tell them, nah, you ain't Mode 1. And they'll say, why not? Why not? Alan, why am I not Mode 1? I said, because you're not being honest with these women about the fact that you're married and you're not being honest with your wife about the fact that you're fucking other women. So automatically that disqualifies you from being Mo 1. That disqualifies you from being Mo 1. That disqualifies you from being Mo 1. Mo 1 is about honesty. In addition to being verbally direct, Mo 1 is about honesty. I say that clearly in my books. I say that clearly in my books. Mo 1 is about honesty. I give you another similar thing that people confuse. And I've talked about this on a couple of videos before. A lot of guys think that talking dirty to women is the same thing as being Mo 1. No, it's not. And if you notice, that's the reason why I created Mo 1 and Who Said Again. I turned them into separate books. Because if you watch that video when I first started talking about this whole copycat issue, I mentioned when I did that long, lengthy timeline, my timeline, I mentioned that when I first came out with like my early draft of Mo 1, it was almost a combination of Mo 1 and Who Said Again. It was almost like 2/3 Mo 1 and 1/3 Who Said Again. My early drafts of Mo 1. But you notice I mainly my brother was the first one. My brother didn't want my first paperback version, the 2006 paperback version, to be too risque, too X-rated. So that's why I took a lot of stuff out. But I later included a lot of stuff that I took out of my 2006 paperback, I included in Who Said Again. And yeah, speaking of my phrase, Who Said Again, and this whole issue of popularizing something and something being associated with you, do you know, because that's my signature talk dirty phrase, Who Said Again, and it has been for years, literally since I was in college. I don't know if most of you know, but you should know if you got my book, Who Said Again. Not only have I had physical sex with a lot of women, but I've had phone sex with even more women. Like, I've had phone sex with probably like 8 to 9 times as many women as I've had physical sex with. Like, I've had phone sex with over 2,000 women. If I had to give a rough estimate, I probably had, starting with the 1991, 1992, up until now, I probably had phone sex with about somewhere between 2,100 and 2,200 women. Yeah. I probably had phone sex with probably between 2,200 women. With a good percentage of those women paying me for it. Yeah, I've actually been paid for phone sex, which I mentioned in Who Said Again. And, but yeah, man, that's such a signature phrase of mine. Do you know what I've had women in relationships and married women say to me? Do you know what I've had them say? I just had one recently, like in the last 2 weeks, told me this. I had a woman, I think she was watching one of my videos about me talking about my signature slogans, signature phrases. And she was telling me, she said, Alan, because me and this particular woman, we used to have phone sex with each other. We never actually had physical sex. We just strictly had phone sex with each other. Matter of fact, at the time I was having phone sex with her, she had a boyfriend who she's now married to. And she said one time, a few months ago, her husband was fucking her. And she said something like, fuck me harder. And he said, ooh, baby, ooh, you know you got to say that again. Ooh, baby, say that again. And she said that made her just freeze. She said it just like made her like freeze. And of course he was like, baby, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she said it just totally threw off her whole mood. Like she said they had to like stop fucking for a while. They resumed later on that day or later on that night, but they had to stop. Because she said she made up some excuse to him. She said, oh, I can't. She ended up lying to him. But the real reason why that made her freeze, that she admitted to me, and again, I've had a number of either women who are married or women in relationships tell me this over the years. She said, Alan, your signature phrase, Who Said Again, I associate that with you so much that if any other man says that, it prevents me from thinking about the man I'm with, and it makes me think about you. And she said, so I don't even like hearing another guy say, ooh, say it again, or something similar to that. Because she said, that automatically makes me think of you. And she said, when my husband said that, that made me automatically think of you. And again, I'm serious. I've had a lot of women tell me that. I mean, because again, I've had physical sex with a lot of women, hundreds of women, but I've had phone sex with like over 2,000 women, man. And all of them, that was my signature phrase, was ooh, say it again. So I've had a lot of women, they say, like I remember when I spoke in Germany in 2013. I remember the day I was about to leave. These guys and these women who I became cool with while I was there, they said, Alan, now that we've met you and talked to you, if there's one phrase we're going to always associate with you more than any other phrase is, ooh, say it again. Ooh, say it again. We're going to always associate that phrase with you. So I'm going to tell you as a lighthearted warning, if you ever end up having sex, physical sex or phone sex with a woman that I've already had physical sex with and or phone sex with, and you use the phrase, ooh, say it again, there's a 90 to 99% chance that you're going to make them think of me. Seriously, you're going to make them think of me. Because, yeah, that's when it comes to talking dirty to women, man, that's like hands down my number one signature phrase that's associated with me is ooh, say it again. That's why, obviously, why I titled my book, Ooh, Say It Again. I'll give you one more woman. Remember, bless her soul, she passed away. I just found this out recently. But you know my show, The Erotic Conversationalist, I interviewed this woman named Brandy L. Davis, which is actually my most downloaded episode of The Erotic Conversationalist. That episode has like probably close to 100,000 downloads. Yeah, man. She told me that. She told me that when we used to talk, she said, Alan, she said, you've corrupted me on ooh, say it again. She said, I can't listen to another man use that phrase with me. She said, it just ain't the same. She said, anytime a guy says something close to ooh, say it again, it automatically makes me think of you. The point I was going to make, I kind of went on a segue. But similar to how I said, just because you're verbally direct does not necessarily mean you're being honest. Just because you're using X-rated language with a woman does not necessarily mean you're being Mo 1. That's a big misinterpretation about Mo 1. A lot of guys think if they talking to a woman in a sexually provocative manner or sexually explicit manner, that automatically means that they're exhibiting Mo 1 behavior. No, it don't. I'll give you an example. Let's say you were talking to a woman for about an hour about your favorite porno movies and her favorite porno movies. And you start talking about specific scenes you like in porno movies, and she started talking about specific scenes she like in porno movies. Now, obviously, that conversation is going to be very, at minimum, R-rated and at maximum XXX-rated conversation. But because you're talking about your favorite porno movies and she's talking about porno movies, does that mean you're being Mo 1 or Mo 1 hardcore? No. Because you're not telling her specifically that you want to fuck her. You're not telling her specifically that you want to fuck her. You're just talking about sex. Just because you're talking about sex with a woman, and even more specifically, you're talking about sex in an explicit manner, does not mean that you're being Mo 1. Mo 1 is about letting a woman know you want to connect with her sexually. It is not just representative of talking about the general subject of sex. It's about letting a woman know that you want to connect with her sexually. Get it? Got it? Good. Yeah. And on the flip side, like, for example, you know about my version of Mo 1 called Mo 1.5. Mo 1.5, which is a version my brother coined. You can be Mo 1 with a woman without using any profanity or sexually explicit language at all. Like, for example, that would be if you went up to a woman and you said, hey, I find you very attractive, but I got to let you know up front, I'm not really interested in a long-term, emotionally profound, strictly monogamous relationship with you. And I'm not interested in engaging in a series of purely platonic interactions with you. So I just want to let you know that up front. See, right there, you've essentially just told a woman you want to fuck her without actually saying the words, I want to fuck you. Right there, you've essentially told a woman you want to fuck her. But you didn't use any profanity. You didn't use any R-rated, X-rated, or triple X-rated language. But that would still be representative of Mo 1. That would be, what my brother calls Mo 1.5. You more so told her what you don't want. Instead of telling her what type of companionship you do want, you instead told her what type of companionship you're not interested in, which is the next best thing. The next best thing than letting a woman know what the specific type of companionship you're interested in is to let a woman know specifically the type of companionship you're not interested in. Get it? Got it? Good. I'm out.